Welcome back, everybody. It is the next episode of the Fearless Business Podcast. I'm your host, Robin Waite, the Fearless Business Coach. We're going to be talking all things content and digital marketing today, and I have a very esteemed guest. The New York Times calls him the web marketing guru, but what I call him is the author of one of the finest books, I think, out there, marketing-wise. It's Marcus Sheridan. Welcome to the show, Marcus. The price thing, I'm known as the pricing guy, actually, and the price thing I always find a really interesting conversation because it is something which I think a lot of people avoid talking about. The second thing is they think that if they put their prices on their website, it's potentially going to put people off because they're going to attract window shoppers. And I had a really interesting case, actually, Marcus. I'd be interested to get your view on this. So I do a lot of work with medical aesthetics companies, say Botox and injectables and non-surgical facelifts and things. And there was one of my clients who they kept on getting people coming from a competitor with like when it had gone wrong, basically. So they call it a reaction and they couldn't figure out why. And it was because both my client and their client had their prices, their own price list on their website. So what each of them were charging, and people were naturally going to the cheaper one, but the cheaper one was the one that was kind of like a bit of a backstreet injector and they weren't doing a particularly good job. It wasn't terribly hygienic. And so then they went to the more, like when the clients had the reactions, they then went to my client to get them resolved and fixed. And they were more expensive by a factor of about 3 or 4 times. What we discovered was that when my client actually put both sets of prices on their website, i.e. the comparison, so that at least people could make an educated decision about, well, if it was going to be based on budget, go here, but watch out, or, you know, depending on what their requirements were. The following 12 months, they went from having 18 reactions come to them to only down to 3 reactions coming from the other clinic. And actually their sales went up massively. So that transparency does, like, I'm a massive fan of like transparent pricing.
Yeah. And just to add to that really quick, if you ever want to build out an amazing, because talking about cost and price on your product or service on your website, I'm not saying just throw a number because that is counterproductive. Here's what's productive. A great cost price page to any website has 5 sections on it. First section, what drives the cost of that product or service up in your industry? What are the factors that drive it up? Second section, what are the factors that keep cost price down in your industry? Third section, why are some companies more expensive? This is where you can really start to build value, by the way, if you're more expensive. Fourth, why are some companies so cheap? This is where you help distinguish why some are, to your point, just like your customer there, why some are so cheap. And then 5, where do you fall? Okay. So in other words, 80% of that page, by the way, it's probably more than 1,000 words because it should be, because this is an important subject you have to really explain and people will take the time to learn it. 80% of that page is about the industry. Only 20% is about you. This is what most companies do wrong. And that is, my friends, how you build value proposition.
So in summary there, what you're saying is most business owners are too busy talking about themselves. It's like walking into a networking event or a wedding and it's all about me and I, and this is what I sell and this is what I do. Whereas actually, like, people want to make educated decisions. And actually what that does is it builds up trust and reputation. Again, it's like a message through they ask, you answer, which is kind of repeated over and over and over again. It's not about, you know, scrapping over trying to make the sale and just doing it for the money. It's actually about building trust and respect with your client base, even if they end up going to your competitors, because that's the best option for them.
That's exactly right. And you can't be afraid of these things because the golden rule says, would you want it? If you would want it, well, then let's do it with our customers as well. That's what's going to lead to the most trust. And trust is the conversation we're having as sales leaders, as marketers. Trust is not going away. Trust is going to be as fundamental to your business in 20 years as it is today. So if you have a choice to earn more trust, and I really mean that, earn it, you got to earn it. Why would you not do it? And it's great that most of your competitors are not doing these things. That's beautiful. Don't ever say to yourself, well, how come nobody does it in my industry? That doesn't matter. What you should be saying to yourself is, my goodness, my customer wants this. Let's talk about it.
100%, absolutely. But you mentioned about a good article length around something like pricing being sort of 1,000 words. For a lot of people, that's like writing that amount of content kind of probably sends shivers down their spine, sends them back to their days of university writing essays and things like that. But actually, in order to get the message across, you do have to get into the habit of writing good quality content that contains all of the details. And if that's 1,000 words, it's 1,000 words, right?
What's funny, Robin, is if a salesperson was sitting down with someone and that someone said, man, I'm looking at your contract price here and you guys are a lot more expensive. Can you help me understand why there's such a big delta here between your price and theirs? I guarantee you that person's about to riff 1,000 words worth of stuff. Why do we wait to explain our value proposition once it's been questioned? By that point, you're probably going to lose the sale. The key is that you explain it before they ask you to justify it. That way, you are in control of the conversation. 1,000 words is nothing, folks. I mean, nothing. It's easy to come up with 2,000 words about cost and price. Because remember, if you have those 5 sections, what drives it up? What keeps it down? Why are some companies so expensive? Why are some companies so cheap? And where do you fall? Boom. I mean, 1,000, boosh. You can get that easy if you're truly looking at all the factors. Because people have said that to me before, Rob, and they're like, man, that's a lot. I'm like, okay, let me ask you a couple questions here. Tell me about the factors that drive costs up. And they just start naming them and naming them and naming them. And I ask them further questions about each one of those factors, like dot, 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 dot. The next thing you know, they spouted off for 20 minutes talking about cost and price. I'm like, 20 minutes? You know, you average 100 words a minute talking, and you've been talking to me for 20 minutes. You've now hit 2,000 words.
Yeah, it's that simple. I tell you what, that's how I wrote both my books, was to actually narrate it. And I worked out, 100 words a minute. You could just send out your phone, like your sales team with their phone, and just get them to hit record when they're out selling. That's probably one of the quickest ways to capture that content, because they're going to get asked those questions anyway.
100%. Or you could go with them. You could read their emails. You could sit with them in those sales meetings, those virtual meetings, etc., and you'll never lack content ideation again.
We've had the gold there, Marcus. We could probably end the interview now. I think we're done.